sure you won't be nervous, right? Yeah, you got it. You got this covered, right?
Oh, yeah.
Your show will go live in 5 seconds. 4, 3, 2, 1. Blog Talk Radio.
Now, from the world's most famous beach, from where beach racing began, it's the Legends of Racing radio show. Live from racing's North Turn Beach Bar and Grill in Ponce Inlet, Florida. The Legends of Racing radio show. And your host, Buzz McKim.
Hey! Thank you very much. Not bad. You folks must be from New Jersey. Some of us are. Well, welcome to the latest edition of Legends of Racing radio show. And we have a super duper extra special guest with us today. You know, we're all about diversity. You know, we talk about stock cars, and we talk about dragsters, and we talk about motorcycles. And today we're going to talk about the Indy 500 and the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. And we have probably the foremost authority on that race and that track. I'm talking about Bill Watson, originally from Indianapolis.
Yes.
Yes. It's actually William Kent Watson. That sounds pretty fancy.
Oh, yeah. That was part Scottish, part English, and part BS. Yeah.
Tell us about your connection with the Indy 500. When did that all begin?
Well, as in the many presentations that I've made around the world in the United States, it really all began in watching, and I use the word watching, the Indianapolis 500 on the radio. Listening to that and always wondering what it would be like to be there. And even though that, you know, I was less than an hour away, that was like a world away. And then my father finally took me to the track, and was right after Bill Vukovich won his second. And I was at the track ever since, so we've had the pleasure of seeing 59 Indy races, and 1963-64, the small photo staff, which was basically unpaid at that time at the track, talked Tony Holman, who is the owner of the track, and talked him into experimenting with 35 millimeter color photography. That was a big innovation at the time.
Everything was black and white before then,
Oh,
right?
black and white, 4x5, the big flash bulbs and all of that.
Yeah.
So we were kind of an experiment. They took on 5 of us, and after the race, they kept one. That was their mistake. They kept me. And for the next 48 years, we participated in capturing the color of the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, and, of course, meeting people and seeing everybody grow up.
Wow. 48 years at the track in a working position.
In a working, yes,
Yeah.
on the staff. Yeah, 59 races I've been to, and so far, good Lord willing, and 48 of those were on the staff of the Speedway.
My gosh, it's over half of the races ever run up there.
Yes, in fact, there's a photograph of the first race that was ever won with all the photographers standing out on the start-finish line, which there was none at that time. It was a chalk mark. And people say, well, are you in the picture? Now, that was 1911. And the counter to that, one of our young photographers says, no, he's taking the picture. So not quite that long, but yeah, over half so far.
Amazing. Yeah, Indianapolis, in the early 1900s, it was the center of the automotive manufacturing industry. And Carl Fisher, who was quite the entrepreneur, he came up with this idea to build this big track, and all the manufacturers would lease the track to test their cars. So, you know, the Indianapolis Speedway is 2.5 miles, very low bank, but it was designed for 75 miles an hour. And I think, what was the speed this year?
239, 240 was your top speeds. Let's see, the winning race, I think, was just under 3 hours or just over 3 hours. And I'm looking here at my notes what it was this year because it changes all the time. And it was about 225 miles an hour.
Amazing. For a track that was built for 75.
Yeah.
But it kind of caught on. They ran some races in 1909 and some in 1910. But the track broke up terribly. They had like a gravel and sand-based tar and all that, and it was a mess. Some folks lost their lives, unfortunately. So after the 1910 event, Fisher said, well, we're going to fix this. So for 3.5 million paving bricks were put down, hence the name the Brickyard. And you had a 2.5-mile track that was made out of bricks. And I can't even imagine the strain on the drivers and the cars, but you figure no shock absorbers or anything. The first Indy 500 took 7 hours, I think it was.
Yes.
And that constant beating all that time. These guys were tougher than Dick Tracy, don't you think?
The drivers back then versus now. I mean, we're of course into sports medicine and exercise and vegetarian and weightlifting and all that. Back then, it was pure strength. I personally. No seat belts, no harnesses. I mean, you were beat to death. And it was hot back then. Of course, it was hot this year, but generally speaking, it was so hot that many of them actually collapsed. And this is one of the reasons that they had installed and designed and put 2 people in a car at the time when they raced for a backup situation as well as pumping the fuel.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they had riding mechanics for the first several races, and then that went away for a while, and then it came back in the 1930s. But to speed ahead a little bit to 1953, it was so hot that day. They talked a lot about the heat in this year's Indy 500, but in 1953, it was so hot that Carl Scarborough, one of the drivers, actually passed away from heat stroke.
Right.
And I mean, those were tough cookies, too.
One of the most famous pictures, which I enjoy, was before my time, was after Vukovic was out. He took off his what we call a uniform at that time, which was literally nothing, and the T-shirt, and took his shoes off, and he had blisters all over his hands and his arms and his feet, and he was basically collapsed in the garage area, sitting on the tool bench, and blisters all over him. It was, and he was not the only one, but that was a very famous picture that was captured at the time.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, he looked like he had really been through the mill. But, now Will Power won the race this year, and he hopped out of the car and looked like he was ready to run a marathon after 500 miles. Those things must be like driving Cadillacs. But, the early days were something just phenomenal. Almost anything that could happen, happened. The manufacturers were using it as an R&D platform for developing safety equipment and better cars, better performance and all that. But I think the oddest thing that I can ever recall happening was back in the 1930s, early 30s. There was an accident. Billy Arnold hit the wall, and one of his wheels broke off and went over the fence or over the wall, across the parking lot, down one of the side streets, because the houses were built right up to the track. And there was a 12-year-old boy playing out in his front yard, and he got hit by that wheel and died.
That is correct.
Isn't that strange? His name was Wilbur Brink, and you never know. And all those years and all that stuff that happened over the years, I'm sure that there's nothing other than alien spacecrafts landing out in the middle of the infield. I think most everything else probably has occurred there.
That's exactly right. And you're talking about alien spacecraft. Reminds me of the last time that we had the hot air balloon liftoff ceremony there, and one of the balloons, I shouldn't say got away, it was actually lifting off, but it didn't get off the ground, and it kind of skipped, and it hit one of the ladies' outhouse restrooms. That was, of course, settled quietly, and to this day, even at that location where they've rebuilt the restroom, there is a painting of a hot air balloon on the side of the outhouse. So, talking about spacecraft and things like that, we did have an incident of that, yes.
Little inside humor there, huh?
Yes, that's for sure.
My. Well, now, you had heard the races all those years, and Sid Collins really painted word pictures. And
marvelous.
He was really the best there was. But when you finally got to the track, what impression did you have? How did that affect you?
Well, I always remember the impression that I got, and I never will forget, even if I would go back today, is the hands on the fence, wanting to get on the other side of the fence and touch or see a car up close, or a driver, or something that the fence kept you away. And so that's an image that I will always take with me. So my time there, I always said, when I saw the kids particularly up against the fence, putting their hands on the fence, looking through, wishing where I used to be, that if I had a moment of time or something, I would go get an autograph for them or get a picture for them with their cameras and then bring it back to them when I had time to do that. But I always remember that, and that stayed with me and still does to this day, because that was basically 3+ generations that I saw these kids grow up, and many of them, when I would see their fathers bring their kids when they were a kid. And the third generation, of course, was the grandfather bringing the son and then their son to that. So that was that's the first impression I got, as well as the size of it.
Mm-hmm. But you actually got to see Vukovic compete.
Oh, yes.
Wow.
Yes.
That was your first race?
Let's see. Yes, that was 50. He was killed in, I was there in 54 and killed in 55.
Right.
So, and he was leading 51, 152, leading in 52, was on the track leading in 153, 54, and was killed in 55.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so he could have had 4 straight.
Yes, his steering went out, and then, of course, he lost his life on the backstretch.
Yeah, so unfortunate.
Could have had.
But he was, they called him the Mad Russian, but he was actually Slovakian, I think, or something like that.
Yes, one of those countries over in Europe, very definitely. But he, as they say, the Mad Russian, that was definitely his claim to fame.
Wasn't a real social kind of person, was he?
No. Many of the drivers were not. Remember, today we're looking at everything that's PR. Drivers have a time. They have sponsors. They have fan bases and things like this. Back then, it was, I have a race today. Many of them raced Friday, Saturday, Sunday. After the 500, went to the track, some other track the following weekend, and raced again. So the fame was fleeting, but this is exactly where everything comes from. No matter whether you're a movie star, race car driver, whatever, fame is fleeting, but it's building.
And nobody was making a real big living back then, too. They had a little track across the street from the Speedway back then called the 16th Street Speedway. And a lot of these guys would run the midget races the night before the 500, just, to kind of make travel money or something. But, they weren't in it for the money, for sure.
Oh, absolutely not. In fact, traditionally, at the Anderson Motor Speedway, they have a track, and they run what they call the Little 500, and they put 33 sprint cars on a quarter-mile track. Most of not many, but many of the drivers of the Speedway have run that, but a lot of them have got on, and within a few laps, they get off. It is 33 cars on a quarter-mile track. It's brutal.
And it's high bank track.
Yes.
And 500 laps. I mean, I'm sure you're walking in circles for about 3 or 4 days after that happens, right?
Oh, my gosh, yes. Like I say, if you just survive it, if you get the 500 laps in, and you feel like that you've accomplished climbing Mount Everest. But some of the drivers did, such as Parnelli Jones, for example, did run that race, and then the next day ran the Indianapolis 500.
Amazing. But the way things have changed, Richard Childress talked about his pit crew, and how tough these guys had it, how tough he had it when he was getting started. Childress, first time they came to Daytona, he slept in his truck. And then the next year, they kind of upscaled to sleeping in a tent. And he said, these guys I got working for me now, he said, they're so pampered that they complain if they don't get a window seat on the airplane. So things have definitely changed.
That's true. I can remember guys coming with their pickup trucks, and if a person had what we at that time called a turtle top with a mattress in the back end, that guy had money. He had the luxury suite of doing that. But most of us slept in the trunk or the back seat of a car.
Yeah, simply amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there have been so many different colorful characters, not only drivers, but mechanics, officials, and even some of the fans. I'm sure you've got some stories about some of them. We're going to be taking a break here in just a second, but when we come back, we'll have to dig into your memory bank there and dig up some of the colorful characters that we've had.
Definitely.
Yes, absolutely. Well, here we are today talking about Indianapolis, another aspect to auto racing that we cover here on Legends of Racing radio show. And we'll be back in just about a minute or two. In one more minute. Okay. Yeah, we're still getting our situation straight. Do you have any bird calls you want to make or anything like that? No?
Let me think. No, I can't think of any bird calls. I've been called a bird brain, but I haven't had no bird calls at this point.
I have a few stories too. Some of the cars that have been part of the history too. Some of the oddball, crazy contraptions that they developed, the turbine car, Smokey Unix sidecar.
Oh, yeah.
And you had a car with 2 engines at one time. And
6 wheels.
That's right. Yeah, 6 wheels. The first rear-engine car did not happen in the early 60s in Indianapolis. It actually happened back in the late 30s, I guess, you know?
That's a possibility. You know, I'm trying to think of the 30s. I was busy at the point.
Oh, I see. Okay. Probably going to elementary school or something?
Yes.
And, Mr. Producer, are we ready to go? All right. Okay, we're going to take a quick break here, folks. We'll be right back. Fantastic.
No problem.
The caution flag is out. Time for a break. We'll be right back with the Legends of Racing Radio Show. Welcome to Homewood Suites by Hilton in Daytona Beach. You're right in the middle of all the action. Daytona International Speedway, the airport, One Daytona, Florida's newest entertainment and retail destination, and of course, the world's most famous beach. You'll love our newly remodeled 1- and 2-bedroom suites, along with our popular King Studios. You won't need your full kitchen, as Homewood Suites Daytona serves up complimentary breakfast and evening social. It's like home away from home. Go to HomewoodDaytona.com for Homewood Suites by Hilton in Daytona Beach. We're back from where it all began, racing's original North Turn Beach Bar and Grill. The Legends of Racing Radio Show continues with your host, Buzz McKim.
Thank you, everybody. We're back here with Bill Watson. Now, Bill also has a business. It's World Class Images. It's a photography and video business established by Bill and his daughter Elizabeth, who just happened to be a FSU graduate. I know my sister and my nieces and my wife will be happy to hear that.
Fantastic.
She was an honors graduate, too. So, and you're married to the lovely Miss Ruth Ann.
Oh, yes.
Yes, indeed.
37 years, got married on 9/11.
Oh.
Everybody's familiar with 9/11.
Yeah.
We were the first disaster. No, she's a great lady. She's been very supportive. I don't know what I would have done without her.
Mm-hmm.
She could have done a whole lot better, but decided to lower her standards, and here we are 37 plus years ago.
We're kind of in the same boat there, you know?
Yeah, well, the answer to that is, of course.
Yes, indeed, right. Now, was Ruth Ann a race fan before you got married?
No, she wasn't, and she tolerates it more than anything else at this particular point, and basically is supportive. We met because of the track. I was going to a party on a rainy day, and I had, at that time, I was dating a young lady who was a model. Ooh. And we went to a party which happened to be at Ruth Ann's condominium in Indianapolis. Mm-hmm. And she came in, and I came across the room, and I went, wow, who is this? And my date model was more interested in, you know, who do you know, and books they're writing, and where they're traveling, and that's not me. I'm basically meat and potatoes. And Ruth Ann came across, and my date's purse and sweater was there, and she says, anybody sitting here? And I says, my date. She says, that's all right, she can find a different place to sit. And she moved it over, and from that point on, I chased her until I caught her.
I'd say you made out okay.
Yes,
Yeah.
I certainly did. I don't know what I'd do without her, but she's threatened a couple of times, of course, to give me that opportunity.
Yeah. Talking about unusual characters, when you think about the wide range of personalities that made up the officials over the years,
oh, wow.
Is there somebody that stands out? I got a couple in mind, but I'm wondering if you got the same couple.
Well, certainly Pat Vadan, which was the starter. He always wore the red velvet hat and the checkered coat. Can you imagine people wearing coats and ties to a track on today? The answer to that is no. But back then, ladies wore long dresses, high heels, gloves, hats, even at times furs. But Pat Vadan, excuse me, I'm getting them mixed up. Pat Vadan was the starter.
Yes.
The white or the red hat and the checkered coat. The red hat was the chief steward.
Oh,
Harlan Fangler.
Fangler, right.
Right, and Pat Vadan was the starter. They were very colorful at that particular time, very much involved. And then there was a gentleman who showed up from Phoenix who was a retired railroad worker and would show up to be the first in line. We had that person.
Larry.
Larry Basiglia, yes.
And his little dog.
And yes, his little dog, and he would show up in this van that had 1,000,000 miles on it. And his frustration was when the Speedway bought him a new van and put the old van his old van into the Speedway Museum.
Oh.
He was very upset because the new van kept breaking down and this others didn't. So he was a happy, unhappy camper. But Larry Basiglia was another guy. I don't know who you're thinking of, but that's three.
I was thinking about those two.
Okay.
Particularly. But Larry, he was Mr. First in Line.
That's right.
And he would get to the track maybe, 2-3 weeks before the race?
Oh, yeah. And would come in, like I say, he parked out in front. He was the first in line. And then there was later on in his latter years when his health started failing, there was another guy that tried to come in and get first in line, but out of graciousness, the guards and the reception committee would always say, no, Larry is here, and you're second in line. So until Larry's death, he was always the first in line. But a super nice guy. He was one of my speakers at a presenter, and but just a super individual, and of course had all the stories in the world to tell, but a very shy individual, but he knew everybody and everybody knew him.
Mm-hmm. Well, how about one of my personal heroes, Jim Hurtubise?
Oh, Jimmy Christmas. First time I ever covered Jimmy was he gave a speech in the parking lot at Kroger's grocery store in Muncie, Indiana, and he was preceded by Eddie Sachs, who, of course, was, they two had similar personalities, but you couldn't shut them up. They knew everything and everybody. But Jimmy Hurtubise was a super nice guy, and I always remember, of course, when he was in the controversy, ran across the track for about qualifications or whatever, and they arrested him. But the big thing was when they opened the car one of the times and threw out all the beer where the engine was actually to be, and they threw the Miller High Life beer. The engine compartment was full of ice and beer, and they threw it out to all the crowd. But Jimmy was a great guy, just a super individual.
Yeah, he had a fraternity that he put together, and in order to be a part of the fraternity, you would have had to have been burned in an IndyCar accident, and he named the group the Crispy Critters.
Yes.
A little morbid humor there.
There was a lot of fun with that, and a lot of that fun is still there, but it's different now. It's on a different scale than what we used to do back in, like I say, the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s. That went away along with the big money and the big sponsors and things behind the scene that people don't normally talk about or know about. Doesn't go on today, of course. There's just too much time demands on everybody.
Back in the in the mid-'60s, Hurtubise had a brand new seaplane that he bought, and he thought it was kind of cool to fly to Daytona during Speed Week and land in the lake. Well, it came time to take off after Speed Week. Tiny Lund, who weighed about 300 pounds, asked Jim if he could hitch a ride home. So, unfortunately, with all that extra weight, Jim couldn't get off the water. So,
I did not know that.
Yeah, so Tiny had to get off the plane and go over to the airport and buy a ticket and fly home.
That's interesting. That's a new one I will add to my portfolio. I did not know that. That's interesting.
Yeah, see, we're not here just to entertain. We want to educate, too, right?
Oh,
we
yeah.
want you to be a well-rounded race fan. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so we did you learn anything today, Skip? Good. Okay. We've done our job, Bill.
Hey, good. Maybe we can ask for a pay raise.
Yeah, let's see how that works out.
Yeah, right.
So we get 2 French fries.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly right.
Yeah, that'd be lovely. But, Mr. Holman, that's another fellow we'll have to talk to when we about when we come back. You talk about an amazing fellow. And he couldn't have done it without a guy named Clarence Cagle.
Oh, Clarence. Oh, my gosh. He knew every nut and bolt in that place and every person, their job, and he ran that like a fine Swiss watch.
Yeah, he certainly did. And Daytona had a fellow in the same capacity named Red Pugh, Red helped build the track in '59, and he's another guy who knew where every nut and bolt was, every circuit breaker, every whatever. I think every speedway needs somebody like that to keep it going.
Oh, very definitely.
Yeah.
Racing is just not the driver. Racing is the track, it's personnel. I'm everybody that from picks up trash to has the TV programs to everything.
Well, we're going to take a little break here for a minute, and we'll come back and enlighten you with some more fantastic information.
The caution flag is out. Time for a break. We'll be right back with the Legends of Racing radio show. Racing's original North Turn is our broadcast headquarters. If you're looking for a good drink, great entertainment, and the best in food, they're right on the beach at Racing's original North Turn. Rhonda and Walt invite you to come on down to dinner tonight. Here are a couple of testimonials. These are actual testimonials from people who have enjoyed the North Turn. Been there many times, always great food and drinks, great location on the beach. And another, what a great experience. It's my new favorite restaurant in the Daytona Beach area, Racing's original North Turn on South Atlantic Avenue. That's A1A in Ponce Inlet, about 3.2 miles south of the Dunlawton Bridge and A1A intersection. It's Racing's original North Turn, a restaurant, museum, bar, gift shop, live music. That's Racing's North Turn. Racing's North Turn has been voted by you top 10 beach bar 7 years in a row. Next year, they're going for top 5. We're back from where it all began. Racing's original North Turn Beach Bar and Grill. The Legends of Racing radio show continues with your host, Buzz McKim.
Thank you very much. Hey, we're going to try something new today. We're going to make this an interactive show. We're going to get audience participation. And we're going to take a question from the audience, going to see how this works out. So we have somebody who may kind of lean a little bit toward the NASCAR side. I don't know, maybe a little bit toward the Allison side. I'm not sure. But anyway, you've got, I think it's a fascinating question. It's something a lot of folks don't know about.
So my name is John Holland. I'm from Port Orange, Florida. My question is, how incredible of a feat was Donnie Allison's crossover in 1971? I believe he was fourth at the Indy 500 and first at Charlotte. However, I know the crossovers now, they don't think they call it the crossover, but that was 2 different days, correct, back then?
Now, when you say a crossover, you're talking about leaving NASCAR coming to Indy or vice versa? Or?
Doing the Indy 500 and the Charlotte 600.
Oh, running both at the same time.
At the same time.
Oh, gee, there's only been, I don't know the exact number. I'm going to say less than a half a dozen times that's been tried. The exact number I don't know. But that is really grueling, and you want things to go smooth because you got to finish Indy and then basically hop on airplanes and get down to Charlotte. And if there's wrecks that would slow it up, you may not get to Charlotte at the time that the car is pushed off or started. So that's a real challenge in itself. Now, can it be done? It's been tried, but there never has been a victor at both places. I'm not sure that will be tried again because of the time constraints and because of the pull of all the press. That type of situation leans itself that it might be fun to try, and there's some big $1 million or $2 million if you win both that you get the extra check and so on and so forth. I don't think sponsors and people will do that anymore. The money is just too much and the time constraints.
And I believe at this point in time, Donnie still has the best record for both races as far as finishes, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, and also Donnie won the Rookie of the Race that year, too, driving for A.J. Foyt, which is a challenge in itself.
That's for sure.
I guess my other part, too, is how well accepted were the NASCAR drivers going into Indy? Because you're thinking that's 71, so most people think it has been recent, but that's a pretty long time ago that the NASCAR drivers were trying to go into Indy, because when was the first NASCAR race at Indy? 94?
92, yes, it was 94.
94.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
The acceptance was one of those that I can best describe as it was friendly. It was feeling each other out. In other words, I'll use the term our staff, their staff. It was friendly. How can we help you? Back and forth. We were invited into the garages when we started capturing images and doing interviews of the NASCAR people when they got there. It was all inclusive, anything that we can do. They would step out of the picture, and of course that doesn't happen anymore. But it was kind of like, we don't know how you're going to react to us, and vice versa. And it was extremely friendly. People sat on the walls and talked to each other. You went in the garages, anything that the drivers could do to help our staff and our staff to help theirs. And that lasted for, a few years until it got, this is a serious business at Indy. This is not just a trial. And then it started parting, and I say parting ways. In other words, we have a job, it's less time, more money, more sponsors, and the atmosphere diminished somewhat into the friendliness, the stepping aside, that type of situation. All of it very natural. Right. So up front, it was a lot of fun for them and for us as well. Nobody disliked anybody. It was like having the new kids in the neighborhood. We were their new kids, and they were our new kids. And people thought, is NASCAR ever going to come to Indy? And there was basically a setup because we had tire testing. I think there were 6 cars that they brought up to Indy, had the tents out. They only had the bleachers open over between turn 1 and 2 for those people who in the middle of the week might want to see NASCAR. What solidified to that is that they had 55,000 people at the tire tests. This means 2 or 3 cars running, and all you could see is turn 1 and turn 2, and they would fly by, and that was this. And I think that convinced NASCAR and IndyCar that, hey, we've got something here that could really do that. And obviously it has. So it's been a wonderful relationship.
Yeah, NASCAR coming over to, or stock car drivers coming over to Indy. Red Byron, the first NASCAR champion, tried it in the late 40s, didn't work out. Marshall Teague came over in the early 50s, and he did fairly well. And then Donnie, Bobby, and now it's a lot of your NASCAR guys have come from the IndyCar ranks. So,
right.
But we're all just one big happy family, right? We're all in it to have fun.
Yeah, because vice versa, when like Mario came over and did the Daytona 500 and AJ and all them too. So all about that same era.
Oh yeah.
Oh
so.
Yes. NASCAR, I'll use the term, as Indy was solidified, NASCAR was growing. It was good for both sides because it created that crossover sharing of fan base, which of course, that's all about anything in life is your fan base, whether it be baseball, football, auto racing, or whatever. You don't have a fan base. That's who pays for it, other than now it's all TV and sponsors. But the situation is it became a situation back and forth of sharing. And I think for the most part, it has really helped both sides in their down periods to continue the interest. It's certainly helped both sides because of safety factors and sharing information, which in turn goes back to we driving our automobiles, sharing the safety factors and learning more about the car in itself and how to run and be safe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Thank you very much, John.
Thank you.
We sure appreciate your participation. Now, it's funny that Bill France, Sr., who founded NASCAR, he started out as an open-wheel racer up outside of D.C. back in the late 20s. And he got into stock cars when he moved to Daytona in the mid-30s. But he also worked with a fellow named Art Sparks. And Art had cars that raced at Indy in the 30s and 40s. And Bill was always on the pit crews. He started in like 38. And he was actually on the winning team, George Robson's team, in 1946. So he really, really wanted to get his boys to Indy. They didn't run the first race there till 94 for NASCAR. Unfortunately, Bill passed away in 92. But I think he probably knew it was in the works because they had the tire test and things. But that was a big deal for him. He always felt that Indy was the ultimate. And he was out to prove that NASCAR was going to be able to compete with them in time. In the official photograph, what they used to do, they used to have this big panoramic photograph that you could buy of every participant that day. And in 1938, there's a picture of Bill France, who was 6'5", and he's standing right next to Joel Thorne, who was a car owner, who was about 6'5". He was working on Thorne's team that day, and they're both standing there side by side, and they kind of stick out like a sore thumb right in the middle of that photograph. And Thorne is kind of an interesting story, too. His parents passed away early. He inherited all this money as a young man. He was a race nut. And at one time, he tried to buy every car in the field so he would be guaranteed an Indy 500 winner. I can't blame the guy for trying, right?
There's been several that's tried to buy the field. that's for sure.
Yeah, well, there was a funny story that came out of talking about doing the double, running both races in one day. A number of years ago, Robbie Gordon, who was driving for Felix Sabates, tried it. And didn't work out well in either race, but Sabates made the statement that I gave Robbie Gordon an unlimited budget, and he surpassed it. That's saying something.
Yeah, I think if there's one thing that has changed racing, other than the rules that never seem to stop changing, and that is money. Money, they used to say is, how much money do you have? How fast do you want to go? And that was the truth. And in fact, at one era of the time when the big bucks started coming into Indy, we always said, well, all the big bucks are here. It's just absolutely silly. We just ought to have a furnace at the start-finish line, and everybody walk by with $100 bills and throw them in. And whoever runs out last wins, because that's pretty much the way things were happening is the teams. That has not completely gone away even today with NASCAR or IndyCar, or for that matter, go-kart racing. Who's got the bucks, who's got the engineering, and et cetera, does definitely have an advantage. There's no doubt about it. But it's kind of nice to see the one-horse teams with the low budget or no budget, and that they seem to do well, and that's good. And the thing is, remember, there's always more people that have not raced and participated in, quote, NASCAR and or IndyCar than have. So always remember that there's millions that have never got lucky enough or had enough money to be able to make one of those races versus still doing the Friday, Saturday night dirt tracks. But that's the backbone of racing, is you got to come up through the ranks or bring a lot of money.
Yeah, before we broke for the last commercial, I had promised that we discuss Tony Holman, the fellow who saved the Speedway after World War II.
Eddie Rickenbacker was behind a lot of that. They were looking for a person that, in fact, would take over the track because because of the war, it had become in just terrible, terrible condition. And basically, they talked Tony into taking over that, and he put everything behind it, his family, I mean, everybody that was totally involved, the fans. There were, of course, like in anything else, lots of volunteerism still today. And he's the one that basically put the money into the track and turned it around in a year to bring it back to what it is today. And, of course, the more you put into it, the more you get out of it. So basically, Tony, who was a Terre Haute person with the business down there with Clabber Girl baking powder and money from his wife, basically had enough money and they talked him into it. And, of course, we know where it's at today.
Yeah, and they put money back into that track constantly. It's always the best racing surface. They have the best facilities. They're really kind of groundbreaking as far as that goes, as far as amenities and the entire facility. And it's greatest race course in the world. And also Clarence Cagle was a fellow who worked for the Holman Company, and Tony put him in charge of getting the track back in order. And I think he bought the track in December of '45, and he told Clarence he wanted to get the track in shape for a race. When are you going to run the race? Well, in May. So he said there wasn't a piece of wood that wasn't rotten.
That's true.
There wasn't, you had weeds growing up through the bricks. Right. After experimenting on many different types of, how are we going to get rid of these darn weeds, he went down to Army Surplus Store and bought a flamethrower and he walked around the track with a flamethrower, blowing these things away. But if you got the money and you have the determination, there's really nothing you can't accomplish.
That's true. In fact, to give you an example, they wanted to do a party at Tony's house in Terre Haute on the farm, horse farm, and there was a long winding road, and the television stations came down, and they did a pre-run, and to bring the race car drivers in. Well, it was dusty because it was a fine gravel road, like most roads, into the farm, and it was dusty, and the TV station said, it's just a dusty. I don't know whether we can do this. The last car you're not going to be able to see. And Tony said, not a problem. So he paved the driveway so they wouldn't have dust. So that was one way that behind the scenes that he put money into it to salvage something for the public so they could actually get a taste of it either on their radio or their television.
Yeah, amazing, amazing. Well, we're going to take our last break. We're going to be back in just a minute, and take it away, Mr. Producer.
The caution flag is out. Time for a break. We'll be right back with the Legends of Racing radio show. At Beach Boys Embroidery and Tees, it's all about making you happy. Beach Boys Embroidery can customize your athletic golf apparel, caps, hats, badges, buttons, magnets, backpacks, bags, totes, clocks, watches, and of course, T-shirts. Sure, they're at 2033 South Ridgewood Avenue in South Daytona, and they're waiting for you to call now. 386-255-5880. Beach Boys Embroidery and Tees. We're back from where it all began. Racing's original North Turn Beach Bar and Grill. The Legends of Racing radio show continues with your host, Buzz McKim.
Thank you very much, folks. We're here with Bill Watson, 48 years on the staff, photo staff of Indianapolis Motor Speedway. And now I don't want to impose on your schedule, but we're just kind of scratching the surface on this 100-plus years of the Indy Motor Speedway, and I'm wondering if you would be interested in coming back at a later time.
Oh, I'd love to, Buzz. You and our relationship has crossed paths many times without each of us knowing it, and I heard about this opportunity that you were doing, and I was excited for you and all of your guests, and certainly honored to be included in that situation, and definitely I would come back. You tell me when, and I'll be here. Anything I can do to help you.
That is fantastic. We thank you so much. And a little touch of Indy history is right here in Daytona Beach. The archive department for the Indianapolis International Speedway Corporation is down at a secret location. But if you take the track tour for an extra fee, they'll take you into the archives. Now, when I headed the archives up back in the late 90s, early 2000s, Mr. France Jr. was paranoid about anybody getting near the archives.
Yeah.
But now they have made it part of the track tour, and it is phenomenal. Millions of photographs, thousands of artifacts. But the one artifact that blew me away, and I remember seeing it as a kid in the old Museum of Speed, which used to be on Route 1 here in South Daytona. The France family bought the Museum of Speed in 1975, and they used it to start the museum in Talladega, but some of the items stayed here in town. It's a little bitty motorcycle engine. It's got a tag on it, and it is the engine that was used by Cannonball Baker to win the first race ever held at Indianapolis Motor Speedway in 1909.
I did not know that.
It is true.
Is that right?
It's a little Indian motorcycle engine. And
it's in the archives?
It's in the archives, sitting on the floor, very unpretentious, kind of rusty, and it had a little tag on there, Cannonball Baker won this, and I often wonder whatever became of that engine. And then it showed up one day, and a bunch of stuff they took over to the archives, and I went, wow. Hallelujah, it was saved. So Baker ended up becoming the first commissioner of NASCAR when the organization was founded in '48, and he was known as one of the very true gentlemen of the sport. This little motorcycle race was only 5 miles, only 2 laps, and but it set the world on its ear, basically, about this fantastic speedway. How about that?
That's interesting. And this, I think, is a history. Every track that you go to, every track that you've heard of, every track that has been closed because of money, and participation is basically history that has formulated and made Indy 500, NASCAR, Formula One, all the motorcycles. That's where the history started. It was not big overnight by any means at all. It all grew, and it was all because of suggestions and the public and the participation. And I can think of no other people to thank than, in fact, of all of the millions, multi-millions probably, of the volunteers around the world that basically helped auto racing become what it is today. Of all of the big money that we hear about, it's still the fan base and the volunteers that have made auto racing become what it is today, because that is actually the sport and the axle of the big wheel.
Yeah, and as far as sponsorship goes, too, auto racing fans are among the most loyal to the product that is being sponsored. They're off the charts as far as their loyalty.
I used to say, some of the things in comparison, people ask me, since I've been to the Formula One and the NASCAR races and MotoGPs and the Indy car races around the world, what's the difference? And I said, first of all, they all have a loyal fan base. They all have color. They all have supporters. They all have sponsors. They're all trying to accomplish the same thing, and that be a winner. If there is a comparison, and I use this as a joke, way back in the day, an IndyCar fan would be one of those that would lean against the trash can, drink their beer, and throw the can on the ground. The NASCAR fan would be 100 yards away from the trash can, would still drink their beer, but they probably would walk across and put it in the trash can. Formula One would hire a person to pour their champagne and to wipe their mouth.
Yes, sir. Yeah, that's about right. Yeah, you do find a different kind of person at every venue for sure. But deep down, they still have that illness that we call being an auto racing fan, and it's
an addiction.
Yeah, and there's no cure for it, and I wouldn't change it for anything.
Oh, absolutely not. I mean, you're the historian and know 100,000 times more information than I do. We have at Indy Donald Davidson, which is a Buzz McKim.
One of my heroes.
Donald Davidson at the track, and he's a historian. And I don't know how you two do it, but on the other hand, people come up and say, how did you ever capture that particular image? How did you ever get to know that driver and his family? And I always use the same thing as you did. It's because we had an interest in it. It's because people opened up. We ask questions. And one of the things in covering racing is meeting everybody from the third assistant janitor to the presidents of the United States and movie stars. They are all human beings. They get up in the morning. They put their pants on the same way we do, maybe more expensive pants and more pants, and they have guards and whatever. But the point being is, when you get to talk to them, they have the same lifestyles that we do, the same illnesses, the same children, the same dog, the same cat. There's really no difference. It's just in their blood to do what they do as a movie star, as a president of the United States, of a king of a country or something like that, or a historian of NASCAR like Buzz.
Well, thank you very much. In the years you've been at the track, what is your ultimate moment, the one that blew your hat off, that you still can't even believe you were a part of it?
Well, I guess first of all would have to be the first and the last. Being able to be on the staff, to even consider that I was even there on the other side of the fence. The last and everything in between, meeting the drivers, their families, their children, whatever. But the thing that probably chokes me up more than anything else is the dedication of people. The generations that show up, and I saw that because on my last time on the staff is when, surprisingly, my daughter and my wife came in to the race and surprised me, and we spent time in Victory Circle and on that, and that was very emotional for me because I knew it was my time to move on, and it was my time to get out of the snow and cold and come south and be a radio person with Buzz McKim. So After clearing up the tears, now I'm in tears again because I got to be on a radio show with Buzz McKim.
No. I got to be on a radio show with Bill Watson. That's what it's all about. And we couldn't be more thrilled to have you here in town. And you're just one of those guys that made it all work. You were part of that fabric that made it all work. And, people like yourself, maybe myself, definitely the folks out here, they all work together to make this whole thing tick.
Yeah.
It's pretty amazing.
Looking back at the photographs and the images that I've captured, that's like looking at a family album. That brings back memories. Being recognized as one of the people in the photograph, that have captured the photograph, I should say, and signing an autograph. And one of the things that I was remembering is sitting on a golf cart with Al Unser, Sr., and Johnny Rutherford, which there in itself, there is 7 IndyCar wins right there in itself. And a young man came up to me and asked me for my autograph because he was the 3rd generation and I had been at the track that long.
Wow.
And he came up and asked for my autograph and started to walk away. And I said, hey, don't you want these gentlemen's autograph? Now remember, they had retired from racing. And he said, Mr. Watson, who are they? And I'm going, you've got to be kidding. And we joked about that more times than not, is that I was asked for the autograph and they weren't. And at the same time, I remember another time coming into the garage area and Johnny Rutherford bringing the food in the back of a station wagon for his crew. And I had my sports car club down there, and we had a place for them to park. And the guard did not know Johnny Rutherford at that time. It was only his 3rd time at the track. And I had to get Johnny Rutherford in to the track with the food because the guard knew me and they didn't know Johnny Rutherford.
Amazing.
But the thing is, this is the fun part of racing. This is the fun part of a family. And it is an addiction. And like I say, the memories we will take, of course, to our grave. And we hope, as you have so eloquently, left something for somebody else to carry on.
You bet.
So you're to be applauded for sharing your knowledge.
Well, bless you, sir. We're going to take another real quick break. We'll be right back to wrap up. And here we go.
The caution flag is out. Time for a break. We'll be right back with the Legends of Racing radio show. Racing's original North Turn is our broadcast headquarters. If you're looking for a good drink, great entertainment, and the best in food, they're right on the beach at Racing's original North Turn. Rhonda and Walt invite you to come on down to dinner tonight. Here are a couple of testimonials. These are actual testimonials from people who have enjoyed the North Turn. Been there many times, always great food and drinks, great location on the beach. And another, what a great experience. It's my new favorite restaurant in the Daytona Beach area, Racing's Original North Turn on South Atlantic Avenue. That's A1A in Ponce Inlet, about 3.2 miles south of the Dunlawton Bridge and A1A intersection. It's Racing's Original North Turn, a restaurant, museum, bar, gift shop, live music. That's Racing's North Turn. Racing's North Turn has been voted by you top 10 beach bar 7 years in a row. Next year, they're going for top 5. Back from where it all began, Racing's original North Turn Beach Bar and Grill. The Legends of Racing radio show continues with your host, Buzz McKim.
Thank you, folks. And I must say that the audience has definitely held up their end of the deal here with that applause. We thank you so very, very much.
No tomatoes, no rocks. It's amazing.
That's right. Yeah, not yet.
Not yet. That's true. That's true.
Yeah. Now, one thing about this guy here, all he has learned, all he has seen, all this lifetime, really, of a love of the camera. You have carried this into another venture, the Port Orange Camera Club. Would you like to talk about that a little bit?
Oh, definitely. Thank you for the opportunity. Yes, the Port Orange Camera Club was started by some people with forethought. Winston Belgrave, Pat Barranco, just to name a couple. Very important, and I have the pleasure now of being elected to the presidency, to the high-paying job, of course, of the Port Orange Camera Club. So anybody that's interested in photography, videography, we would invite you to join us. You do not have to be an expert. We have everybody ages 25 to 85, females, males, marrieds, unmarrieds, divorcees, widows, age groups, from novice to advanced people. And we are a fun group. And we meet on the second and the fourth Wednesdays at the Port Orange Adult Center. And you can give me a call if you want to, but I invite you to come and see our programs. We take trips. One we're taking tomorrow is the Warbirds. We're going up and photograph the Warbirds Museum. I've taken groups and taught them how to shoot photography at the New Smyrna Speedway, the Daytona Speedway. But we take trips, we have meetings, we have speakers. So the Port Orange Camera Club, if you like to have camaraderie, you like to have fun, and you like to eat, I would suggest that you visit the Port Orange Camera Club, because we just have a marvelous time, and we share with each other in photography. So thank you, Buzz, for the opportunity to at least share that.
Well, it's a great bunch of people, and my wife and I were invited a while back, and we thoroughly enjoyed our visit, and the folks are wonderful, and you'll probably be seeing a check for membership from us here pretty soon.
Great. Buzz is also going to be our main speaker and bring his talents in painting and his education. So he's going to be he was our judge the last time, and now we've invited him to be a program. So he's going to share his talents. That's in July, I believe. And so, again, show up to see Buzz and his talents of painting. He doesn't just know it in the mind. He puts it on the canvas, and such great talent. So we're looking forward to that program. I'm sure it'll be a packed house.
Yeah, and I'll be wearing a chicken outfit that night, too. So
Yes.
it'll be worth the price of admission for sure. Absolutely. Okay, here we go. Here's a name for you, AJ.
Oh, my. AJ has done it all, seen it all, and his constant comment. And I was so glad to see him at the track this year, because his health, his weight, as the cars get older and they get rustier, and then finally a wheel comes off, he was at the track this year. But AJ has done it all. AJ has constantly said what made AJ Foyt was the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. I can agree with him only for the simple reason I don't dare disagree with him. But AJ is so right. It's the fan base. It's his accomplishments in racing, whether it be IndyCar, sprint cars, NASCAR, whatever. AJ has done it and proved that he can do it. And he is a cantankerous person, but he has put his money where his mouth is, and he has won, and he has made racing, not just Indy, racing a better place, and he shared a lot of that, a lot of behind-the-scenes situations. And one of the stories that I rarely tell is the time that he was helping a new driver, and the venue that we were all together in a small room, and he was sharing his knowledge and his race expertise to help a young driver at that particular time. Now, a lot of people say, well, where and when did that happen? I'm always reluctant to say of where and when it happened, but usually people can twist my arm and get it out of me. Actually, it was in the shower at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. And we were all going into the showers and getting cleaned up to go do whatever we do after the track closes. And AJ and I were in there talking, and a new driver came in, a rookie driver, and he was like, oh my gosh. And it wasn't because we were in the shower. It was that AJ was there, and he got an opportunity to learn from AJ at that particular point. So AJ helps anybody, anywhere, anytime.
The sign of a true champion.
That's right.
Yeah. How about one more real quick one here? How about Mario? How many 500s should he have won?
I'm going to say minimally 3, possibly 4. We have fun because it was always Mario is slowing down on the backstretch, which seemed to be that, and then it was always something in braking, and we nicknamed, as everybody gets a nickname, as I was nicknamed at the track, we named them the Whiner family. That was an affectionate situation because it was a situation that Mario should have won. The race that he won, actually, he crashed his car. I was there when it hit the wall, and he disintegrated his car and then came back with the Hawk and won the race that year and got a big kiss from Granatelli, and he's always razzed about that. I was also there in his rookie year when he wasn't sure whether he was going to make the race, and saw Mario and his wife at that time, who was extremely shy. Mario was extremely shy. And that's where his racing started with the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. But I would say at least 3 or 4 times that something happened. But we could say that about many people. Sure. Lloyd Ruby, for example, was another one that always a fan favorite, but never quite got across the finish line. But Mario, he's done it all also. NASCAR, IndyCar, Formula One, and it's passed down through his family.
This certainly has been a heck of an hour. It's gone by way too quick. So we'll be doing part 2 here pretty soon. But next week, we're going to have Chip Wild, the president of Daytona International Speedway. He was slated for this week, but he was called to Michigan. So Bill was slated for next week, so he was kind enough to change his schedule around and meet with us today.
That's going to be a great program. Chip's a great guy.
Yeah, he's awesome. But you can catch us on Facebook. You can catch us on live, Facebook Live. blogtalkradio.com. That should pretty well do it. Yeah, and if you need to, I'll even come to your house and tell you stories. It doesn't matter,
Well, there you go.
But how about a big old round of applause for Bill Watson?
Hey, thank you. Thank you very much.
Absolutely fantastic.
Thank you, Buzz. I appreciate it. I look forward to coming back, and anything that I can do to help this program along, you know that I will at a drop of a hat. My phone is a 24/7, and I think this is fantastic to share.
The Legends of Racing radio show originates live from the very spot where beach racing began, Racing's North Turn Beach Bar and Grill. Join us next time for the Legends of Racing radio show with Buzz McKim.